All right, I got 3 o'clock. We've got a guest speaker today for about 15 minutes. Before we get into the other materials that we want to talk about today, I'll let her introduce herself in full, but I'd like to welcome Ashley Johnson to talk to you about pre-professional programs. So Ashley,
awesome, thank you all so much. Like you said, my name is Ashley Johnson. I am the pre-professional coordinator here at USM. Hopefully some of y'all are already on my mailing list, but if you're not, some of the areas that I currently advise for are pre-med, pre-dental, pre-PT, pre-PA. I'm going to say them all because there's so many of them. Pre-veterinary, pre-optometry, pre-pharmacy, pre-occupational therapy, and pre-law. For a lot of these, chemistry as a major really sets you up to go straight into these. Especially like with pre-med, you've got all of your prereqs already included in there. So it's super easy to add one of these on to the side. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about like how to get there. So I work with students. I do workshops throughout the semester. I'm going to share a few of those, but I also work with students one-on-one. So some things that I can help with as y'all navigate the pre-professional process, because they are difficult to navigate the systems. So the application systems itself. All of the areas that I mentioned that I advise for all have a centralized application system, but they all have a lot of different pieces. So I can definitely help you navigate that. I can help you figure out what the prereqs are. So like I said, for chemistry, if you're interested in going into like dental, pharmacy, med, most of the prereqs, if not all, are going to already be built into your curriculum. But if you're interested in something like physical therapy or occupational therapy, we might have to figure out how to take a couple of classes outside of that curriculum to make sure that you are competitive. Experiences and activities. I don't care what y'all do as long as y'all are doing things outside of the classroom. If you are working at Chick-fil-A, if you are volunteering with the animal shelter, if you are in a sorority, it doesn't matter. All of those things we are going to use on your application in the future. So make sure that you are keeping track of that stuff as soon as you start doing it. It'll make your life so much easier when you go to apply to these programs, or even if you apply to graduate programs in the future. If you're not interested in pre-professional, you can't just apply to programs anymore with just a GPA. You have to have all of these different experiences. I also help review personal statements and essays. If the program you are interested in has standardized testing, I can let you know about that and also when to take that. When is like the ideal time to take that test? And then just the timeline to apply. Whether you want to go right after you graduate or if you want to take a gap year, knowing when you're going to apply can help you make sure that you are meeting those milestones that you need to meet. For all of my programs, my longest application cycle or my pre-vet students, that application process, for instance, the one that opens up in January 26 will not end until fall 27. So that's like a full 1.5 year application process. Some of my other ones are just like a year, but usually if you're wanting to go right after you graduate, you're applying for these programs in between your junior and your senior year. So it really sneaks up on you. So making sure you understand when you're applying is important. So some of those applications, like I mentioned, employment, research, shadowing, volunteer, leadership, those are some of the things that can look really good on your application. GPA, of course, is super important. Make sure you're maintaining that high GPA. Recommendation letters, making sure you're getting to know your professors, because for a lot of the programs, they specifically require science professors to be a recommender for you. Interviews, I help with interviews, and then I help with all of the mini essays that you have to write to apply to any one of these programs. And I have a caveat down here. There is no like one way to go to med school or one way to go to law school or whichever one you're interested in. I really want y'all to be unique and interesting candidates. I don't want y'all to have the same thing on your resume when you go to apply as the person sitting next to you. Even within the same major, you can do things to make you stand out from the next person. So I do have a lot of case studies coming up. This is the first time I've done these, and I think that they're turning out really cool. I've already had one. But basically, I have pulled applications from real USM students. I have changed any identifying information, but I'm going to be sharing those applications with y'all, and then we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about whether we think these students were accepted, whether we think they were waitlisted or denied. If we think they were waitlisted or denied, what are some things that we think that they could do to improve their application for next time. And so like I said, these are real students, and so I'm hoping that that can provide y'all with a little bit of insight onto how different applications can look, and things like that. So I've got this list up here. I also have them all in Eagle Hub, so if you don't get a chance to take a picture of these now, and then they'll also be in the presentation, but they're in Eagle Hub too.
So these are things that they can come and attend. I will count these would be pre-approved activities assignment 2, because none of these are going to happen before activity 1, but I will, if you want to go to one of these, I would count that as an on-campus activity.
Yes. And they're all during lunchtime. If you have to leave a little bit early for a class, I'm okay with that. I just want y'all to come and get the information. Oh, sorry. There you go.
This will be on the recording.
Yeah. Okay, if you are an international student, the process to applying to some of these programs looks a little different. So I'm partnering with the International Student Services Office, and I'm going to do a presentation on pre-prof just for international students, so we can kind of talk about some of those differences and nuances. Free food at that one. I think it's a nacho bar. That's October 3rd at 11:30 over in the international space. Anybody interested in pre-law in here? Or like maybe interested in pre-law? I figured this wasn't my audience for pre-law, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Get one, but I don't think I have one this
I am doing a law school application 101 workshop for those that think they might be interested in that. And then campus visits. So this is probably my most important slide. These are the ones that if you don't come to anything else or do anything else, this is what I want y'all to come to. So these are programs, professional programs that are coming to USM and are recruiting our students, right? So William Carey PT and OT is coming next week. We have Southern College of Optometry also coming next week. Next week's a busy week. The week after, we have UMMC School of Medicine and Barry University School of Pediatric Medicine. We have Mississippi Rural Physician and Dentist Scholarship Program. This is like a super unique opportunity for Mississippi where you can get your education totally paid for as long as you agree to work in a rural area. So they're going to come talk about that. We also have VCOM, which is an osteopathic medical school, doing a virtual presentation. I added William Carey Pharmacy today. They're coming November 4th, so I'll be adding that to Eagle Hub soon. And then also today I added Belmont University up in Nashville. They have a brand new MD program, and so they're going to be doing one for us, I think, in November as well. So this is like the best resource. Hear directly from the programs, hear why you should consider that specific field. I think it is a total win when students come to one of these things and then they're like, absolutely not, I don't want to do that. Because at least like that provides you some clarity, right? Whether, even if it's not, if you don't end up with me, that's okay. Hear from other students. We have a student application panel on October 2nd. I know some of y'all are in your first couple of years, but it's never too early to start thinking about the application. So this one is going to be from the perspective of students going through the process. I'll have med, dental, PA, PT, and OT students all attending. I am working on an MCAT for med school, a DAT for dental school, and a GRE for PT and a few others panels. So again, students that have taken these exams recently coming to talk about their experiences, what they wish they had done differently, what study materials they used, what worked, what didn't. And so I'll be sharing those on Eagle Hub too, hopefully soon. We have a ton of pre-professional organizations. So I'm going to briefly list these, but I do have their Instagrams up here so you can follow them. I think it's great to get connected with other students because they're the ones like actually out there like shadowing in different areas. So if you're like, I need to shadow a dentist, but I have no idea where to start, these students are shadowing dentists and they can share their contacts with you way better than I can. So these are really great ways to get connected. So we've got AMSA, American Medical Student Association, Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students, Pre-Dental Society, Pre-PA Society, and Pre-Physical and Occupational Therapy Society. I also have the Pre-Law Society, the Pre-Pharmacy Society is in the works. They've started doing some stuff, but we're waiting on final registration to be completed for that. The Student Health Coalition, Alpha Epsilon Delta is our pre-health honor society for students that have taken 3 or more semesters of science coursework and have over a 3.3. And then I have my pre-professional student ambassadors who help me share events that I do, so you can follow them on Instagram too. Okay. So if you are interested in getting on my email list, if you are not currently on my email list, this is the QR code to sign up so that you can get updates about all of these events. I try my best not to spam y'all. And so I do have, like, if you're interested in dentistry, you get put in your own pre-dental group. You don't get emails about pre-med and pre-OT and vice versa, because I don't want to send y'all a million emails that don't relate to you. So this is the email or the link to sign up. And then this is my contact information. So I'm happy to meet with y'all one-on-one if you can't make it to one of the workshops and events I have planned. But I also have a link to our Canvas page. So this just has a ton of general information. I have videos of myself like walking through the different application systems. I have prereqs. I have all different resources on there. And so this is a good place to start if you are thinking about maybe multiple different areas. If you're just like, I don't even know what PA is, so I don't know if I'm interested in that. This would be a good place to like look at multiple things before really making that decision and coming to meet with me. I know, like, even though you can always back out of pre-professional emails and pre-professional, if at any point you decide that's not for me, just email me and let me know, and I can like remove you. But this is a low commitment way to like get some information. Any questions? Okay.
How many, just let's give her a quick show of hands. How many of you in here are pre-med? Thinking pre-med.
Love it. I hope to see you all at my pre-med things.
Pre-dental? No, there's a few of you.
Okay.
Any optometry? Pharmacy? Couple
Okay.
pharmacy folks?
Awesome.
Okay. Just
Well,
to kind of give you an idea.
Yeah. Y'all should have all of that on your calendars. I'm clocking all of your faces, so I hope to see y'all there soon. And yeah, thank y'all for having me.
Yeah,
I really
well, thanks for
appreciate
coming.
it.
I'm going to give you your,
Yeah.
let me eject it real quick. Let me eject no name here.
Very good.
That's good for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming. We
Of course,
appreciate it.
Of course. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. So, a couple of things. There is a seminar this Friday. This is a faculty member from the University of Alabama. If you all are worried about being able to make an activity, this would count as an activity. You can go to this seminar. It's at 1:30 this Friday in Tech 106 downstairs. You can go there, take your form with you, listen to the talk, get the faculty advisor who should, I think it's Dr. Vijay Rangachari. Just walk up to him and ask him to sign the form on your way out, and then you can do that. So there's still one opportunity for you to get a on-campus activity before the Friday due date. The other thing that I want to talk about, I'm going to hand back your personalized semester-by-semester guides today. I have printed them out, I have written on them, I have highlighted things, and at the front is a rubric, and there's a Part A, which is the initial submission, and a Part B. Part B will be blank, but it will give you an idea of what I'm looking for when you submit to your advisor and carbon copy me on that submission, okay? And I will put a due date and an announcement for that. But advising opens up October 1st-ish. I don't know the exact date, so the due date will be around that time. So keep that in mind. You got a couple of weeks to take my feedback, work on it, make some changes if necessary. For the most part, I have to say I was pleased with the overall submission. So not everybody got all the points everywhere, but there's a thing back here that gives you a breakdown of how those points were and kind of where I would have placed you in terms of how well you did. So you can kind of look at that and get kind of some feedback. So that'll give you an idea of how that was graded. Any questions about that before we move into today's topics? Okay, towards the end, we will pass those back out. All right, so today I've given you stuff to read on what is an ethical chemist. Tell me a little bit about what you took from the reading.
The different processes that we're supposed to go through as we progress through our phases of chemistry.
Okay. What else? That's okay. Yeah.
So kind of something that was like, it's kind of basic, but it kind of spoke to me was how everybody's kind of expected to have ethics in whatever program they go to, but especially when you go into either like the sciences or medical school or veterinary school, you have to have a more extreme level of ethics because of the things that you're dealing with.
Okay, that's very good. Is there a difference between morals and ethics? Yeah. How would you describe that difference?
Morals is your own personal like grade of how ethical you are.
Okay. All right, I'll buy that. Anything else? Do we have societal norms or morals?
Yes.
We do, and regardless of religion, right? I think most people would agree that it's not okay to lie or cheat or steal or kill or whatever, right? You had something to say.
Ethics, that kind of like more of a professional thing.
Yeah, that's right. So when we start to get into ethics, we start to get into professional conduct, right? And so we generally think of general morals, right, that we were just talking about applying to everybody within society, right? Now there may be some cultural differences and there may be this, that, and the other. But in general, I think there's a core set of morals that no matter which part of the globe you go to, generally more or less it's going to be the same. They're going to have history that's based on that. They're going to have maybe fables and myths and religions and other things that are all based on those basic tenets, right? And I think we can all agree with that. And so those typically apply to all of us. But ethics, what we're talking about here, we're getting into professional ethics, right? And do those apply to everybody? Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. But it applies to us within our discipline or within our field. And you had said earlier, right, that some of us are in professions that have additional responsibilities to society, right? And I would argue that if you are, and I don't mean any disrespect to my artist friends, but I would argue that the professional ethics that might be expected in the arts would be very different than the professional ethics that are in the sciences, right? Because what we provide society in both of those instances is not the same. I'm not saying one has more value or less value than the other. I'm not making that judgment, right? But when you are expressing yourself in an artistic form, right, you are doing that and you're giving that gift to society. When we do things as a scientist and we're giving that gift to society, that has other implications, right? I mean, if we were engineers and we were designing a bridge and somebody drove over and it fell down because of a bad design, we've caused harm, right? We could have the potential to cause harm. If you're a physician and you are going to do surgery or prescribe medicines, right, your ethics are certainly different than somebody else in the humanities or in the arts because of the potential to cause harm. And so every academic area usually has a professional organization that comes up with a code of conduct or a code of ethics for that field. And if you find it for, let's say art, you will find that there are some things that are similar, right? I think it's fair to say that artists and chemists both would say lying, cheating, and stealing are not good things, right? But beyond that, there will be some differences. And that's okay because of the role of our different disciplines, okay? What else did you take from it? What does it mean to be an ethical chemist?
I think this reading emphasized how much more important it is to be an ethical chemist because, like you said, we put people in, we're here to solve a lot of chemical problems and that either ends with living or death.
It could, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can design medicines and drugs, and we can do all of those things that can have an impact on society in general. So that's clearly an ethical responsibility there. Yeah.
I think one ethical responsibility is to produce honest and reproducible work.
Reproducible work, that's absolutely right. How do we ensure that?
By
Scientific method.
By following the scientific method, yeah?
by posting all of our research.
By publishing our research, posting it in some form, sharing it, right? There's many ways in which we can share our research. But really, in our field, we invite people to copy us, right? We invite people to copy us. We say, this is what I did, this is how I did it, this is the result I had. Please come and reproduce it and try to prove me wrong. That's different than in some other areas where it's, hey, I created that, don't take that, right?
So it's like they openly accept criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. What else? Why would, oh, yeah, please.
Kind of on that note, you should give credit to people, whether you disprove them or you agree with them. Like, don't take somebody's thing,
Okay.
idea.
Don't plagiarize, yeah, don't plagiarize, don't take credit where it's not due, right? That's tempting though, isn't it? You're walking along and you hear somebody just mention something that gives you a spark of an idea, and you run with it, all of a sudden you become famous, right? How many people think that all of the Nobel Prize winners did the exact work that they got the Nobel Prize for in the laboratory? In modern times, essentially zero. But yet, the PI gets the Nobel Prize because they oversaw that research. Is that right? Is that fair? Well, I mean, it's a gray area, isn't it?
Yeah, it's under ethics.
Depends on the ethics. It depends on a number of things.
That's why most Nobel Prizes nowadays are with a group of scientists.
Yeah, many now are shared, right? And back 50 years ago, it was nothing to see a Nobel Prize awarded to an individual, and that was the only individual that got the $1 million prize or whatever it is now, right? But today you will see, the Nobel Prize in X, and it is shared between this group, that group, and this person, that person, and so on and so forth. We are certainly becoming more collaborative, right? But what you will see anytime that these Nobel laureates talk, and I've seen many a Nobel laureate talk, one of the very first things that they typically say is, this work is not just my own. I had a group, and they acknowledge the group that worked with them. Yes, I'm the one that went to Switzerland and got the prize, but this work was done by this group of people, and they typically list those people out, and they thank them very much, and go from there. Okay. Anything else you want to share before we dig in? All right, so there were, how many? There were 5 main points that Mr. Kovac talked about. The first was choosing a research project. Why is choosing a research project considered an ethical consideration? Yeah.
Because if you start off with a bad topic that is considered unethical, then your entire research, you can't get good research out of a bad topic.
Okay, I'll buy that.
They could pick a topic that they're biased on, like they already have pre-reserved, predictions for what's gonna go on. So even if what they want to happen didn't happen,
Yeah.
they say that it did, and then falsify stuff.
And we're seeing that all the time today on social media. People have this idea and then they go and hunt for things that seem to support that. That is not the scientific method. That is pseudoscience at best, right? And we know better than that. What else?
You need to have a direct question that somebody can read and say, yes, I'll fund that.
Okay.
Without any money.
True.
If the topic itself is inherently harmful to what you're trying to test, say you're trying to make a toxic and explosive chemical and you're trying to see how toxic and explosive it is by testing it on people, that's bad
Okay.
research.
Yeah, and so that's why we've set up review boards to review scholarly research before we, especially with human subjects, right? You can't just say, I'm going to go study the chemistry of somebody's blood. I mean, you got to go through a whole review process because we could potentially cause harm to that individual, right? So you've got to do a lot of that kind of stuff. What I will say is, in choosing a research project, For me, the ethical question comes in anytime somebody comes up to me and says, I've got an interesting question. The first thing I ask myself is, do I have sufficient expertise to be of value? And a perfect example is, and many of you were either too young or weren't even born yet, but how many of you remember the oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill?
Watched the movie about
You watched the movie about it, yeah. Well, after that happened, there was a lot of money from BP to mitigate the problem, and a lot of that money went to academia to study this, that, and the other. And I had an individual come to me and say, we've got, I think it was like $2 million that we could get, and this is the question, can you help us with that? And I turned that down because I did not have the expertise to help them answer that question. And for me to get up to speed to have that expertise would have required more time than I had. And so ethically, I felt like I couldn't say, sure. Sure, thank you very much, right? But it's tempting. I have to admit, I sat there and thought about it for a while. Is there any way I could, $2 million is a tempting sum, right? Very tempting sum. But at the end of the day, you also want to protect your reputation, etc. Discarding a data point. Are we allowed to discard data points?
No.
Are you sure? Can I discard a data point in an analysis? I can, but I'm not supposed to? It's unethical?
I'm not gonna say it's unethical, just include it.
In the fine print.
Yeah, but that's not discarding.
I don't think you should discard a data point because that can throw your whole research off. Like, if you were doing something, per se, like a medicine, and somebody had this reaction to it and nobody else did, and you throw the data point away, and now this group of people are having that reaction, they're gonna come back to you and be like, why you didn't include that in your research. I don't understand why you wouldn't include it.
That's a fair point.
I feel like being ethical is like following a set of moral rules, and the whole like collective societal moral rules are honesty, don't lie, don't cheat, steal, all that stuff, and that's basically lying.
Okay.
What do you mean by like a data point? Is it like
I'm meaning it in a
excluding-
general sense, a data point.
Excluding if you made a mistake or something?
Now we're starting to get into a little more nuance, right? So what do I mean by a data point? That's a very good point.
Whenever your stuff is supposed to be reproducible, so if you if you produce something and you ignore it, how are you expecting other people to not produce that exact thing?
You all are asking the different questions that should be coming into your mind at every step. I would argue that if you did the experiment carefully and you've got a data point that seems like an outlier, you probably shouldn't discard it. Well, let's say you walk into the lab and let's say you're doing some titrations and you've got 10 titrations to do, and you know for a fact that last titration you were tired and you overshot the endpoint. You know you did that. Can you redo that and just discard that? Would that be okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think so, because you know you messed it up. It turned pink and I went way past pink, right? And so I know that has to be a bad point. I don't think there's anything unethical about that. In fact, I think it would be wrong to include it when you know you messed up and didn't follow the protocol, right? I think we can all agree with that. That doesn't mean, however, that you get your eraser out and start erasing it out of your notebook. You make a note of, I know that class 10 was not treated properly, and so I'm excluding it from the data.
Perhaps you would note the mistake that you made and publish what happened when you made that mistake so other people don't make that mistake.
Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. What if you did everything absolutely correct, as we have shown here in the let's see if I can get that moving. So here he's got some data. And I think most of you would agree that kind of looks like a linear trend. But it looks like there might be a couple of points that are deviating from that, right? Can I just go, well, let's see, I've got 6 points that look like a line, I got 2 that don't line up with that line, let's just throw the 2 out. No, that wouldn't be right? But what could I do? I could do a statistical analysis and determine whether or not those were outliers and throw them out. There are legitimate ways in which you can determine that something is likely to be an outlier. There are certain statistical tests that you will learn about, especially in analytical chemistry, okay? But it becomes tempting to just say, well, that doesn't really hold with my thoughts. That looks a lot better, right? I can draw kind of a straight line right through there and everything's nice and pretty, and that kind of fits what I'm thinking is going to happen, so there we go. That's how I'm going to publish it. That would be unethical, right? But if I did a careful analysis, or if I went back to the notebook, maybe my graduate student was doing this, and they made a note of, well, in this place they actually put the wrong solution in the burette or whatever, and I could go, well, that's probably, I might send them back and tell them to do it again, right? So we can certainly talk about that. Writing scientific articles and reports. What comes up about ethics there? What are some things that come to your mind? You all are going to write a lot of lab reports. What's one ethical thing that you can tell me about?
Sometimes like if you didn't write it, it didn't happen, you didn't document it.
All right. That happens. We have students every semester, not chemistry students, I hope, but students in labs who were called into, before a grade review board or an academic integrity board because they plagiarized. They just made it up. There's proof of that. And we know you weren't in lab that day, and yet you've got a lab report with all this data that you're claiming to be your own. That stuff has happened. Is that okay?
No.
Are you all okay? Would you all be okay with that if you knew that was going on? Right? We're all trained not to rat on our friends, right? But would that still set well with you? That wouldn't set well with you, especially if you went to lab and did your work and turned it in, right? Absolutely not, right? So what other issues might come up in lab reports that you all will be writing? Yeah.
Lack of citation.
Lack of citation, okay? Taking credit, again, for somebody else's work, making it seem like it was your own when in fact you got that from another source. Okay. How many of you are in lab this semester? How many of you have a lab partner? What are some ethical issues there?
Who did it?
Who did what? Is it ethical for your lab partner just to sit back and say, you're better at this than I am, you just do it?
If I want the extra experience.
If you want the what?
Extra experience.
If you want the extra experience? I think we can probably get you that more ethically than that. Right? Or what about if you and your lab partner are getting together to write the lab report? What might be some ethical concerns there?
Who writes it?
Who, pardon?
Who writes it?
Who writes it?
Who's the ethics?
Right? Does that mean that both of you have to be at the keyboard and typing and then merge them together? No, but it does mean that you both need to work on it, right? Maybe you're both, yeah, what did you contribute, right? Maybe your part of the lab experiment was to do this one part. You said, you know what, I'll write that piece up, and you'll write your piece up, we'll put them together, and then we'll work on the introduction together, and we'll work on the conclusion together. That might be a perfectly ethical way to handle that. But what would be an unethical way to do that? Would be, just farm it all off to somebody else. But that's the easy thing to do, right?
Yeah, it's easy.
It's the easy thing to do, right? But that's not the right thing to do. And you're going to find that the easy thing to do is rarely the right thing to do. And you're going to be faced with some of those kinds of things. Point 4 was conflict of interest and conflict of commitment. Conflict of interest and conflict of commitment. What would be a conflict of interest?
Whenever you purposefully, what would be the word, where you kind of, you disregard the reputation, or you make the reputation more poorer. I don't know the word for that.
Okay. Think about it.
I feel like
Just one second. I'll come back.
When you get certain data points that fit this agenda, but you want someone's looking to you to get data points that fit another agenda,
Mhm.
so you skew the results so that it's closer to what you want.
Okay. What were you going to say?
Maybe you have another chemist in another city that you don't like, so you try to do that research in order to prove them wrong, and then like falsify the data.
Falsifying the data definitely would be an unethical thing, that's true.
If you like investing in a research project, like money can do a lot.
Okay. I like that example. They're all good examples, but I like that one in particular because I think you can relate to it very easily. Let's say that I own 100 shares of Cygen's stock, this mythical company, Cygen. Okay? And Cygen is going to give me a research grant. Are there ethical considerations there? And what are those ethical considerations?
What they want to do, is it for a good reason? You're taking the money to do something good with it, or taking the money just to get your name out?
Let's assume I'm taking the money to do something good,
You don't take the money to do something.
but is there still an ethical conflict there?
Yeah, because he hands the cookie jar.
Because my hand's in the cookie jar. I like the way, yeah. Somebody over here had a, I thought so, I saw
That's what it's qualified to do it.
Am I qualified to do it? Of course, that's always a question, right?
Do you have the time to do it?
Do I have the time to do it? That gets to conflict of commitment. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But if I stand to gain personally, monetarily from the results of my research, I think it's fair to say I have a vested interest in the outcome. Are scientists supposed to have a vested interest in the outcome?
No.
We're supposed to have a vested interest in the truth, whatever that may be. I can't tell you how many times I've gone in with an idea and a hypothesis that turned out not to be true, and I wanted it so bad to be true because it was such a cool idea in my head. But you know what? The chemistry just didn't work, and you've got to come to grips with it, right? And yes, I tried every which way to figure, and sometimes you just go, you know what? It just isn't going to work. But when you start to have money involved in it, right? Can anybody think of anything today or in the past where people had a financial interest in an outcome, either science or not science, where it created an ethical issue?
I feel like a lot of the time with stockbrokers and those finance bros on Wall Street and whatnot, they oftentimes have that conflict of interest where they're looking entirely for this company to make profit, and even if they don't, like, I'll sell it to someone else, jib it, whatever, just entirely focused on the money aspect, not the moral.
So does that mean that science, oh, go ahead.
I feel like the Manhattan Project would be one of those very conflict of interest type things, because that's ultimately unethical. They're making a weapon, but this was like leading edge research to them. And it helped us in a bunch of other ways to produce renewable means of power and all this other stuff. They used it to make a weapon first.
Okay.
That's what their goal was.
Yeah, okay. That can definitely create some ethical dilemmas, and in fact, many of those scientists had that conflict.
Scientists being lobbied by sugar companies to demonize fat instead of sugar, to sell
Okay.
more sugar.
Yeah, I'll just find the researcher who's gonna promote my idea, and I'm just gonna give them the money, right? That creates a conflict, doesn't it? Does that mean that there's not legitimate research to be done about sugars and fats and all these things? Of course not. There's absolutely legitimate research to be done. But I can't stand to personally gain from it in that way, in a way that I might change the outcome. Does anybody know how we deal with that at the institution? That's okay, I don't expect you to know. But every year, I am required to submit to the institution what my conflicts might be.
It's like political leanings and stuff?
Not political leanings. I'm allowed to have my own political beliefs, but I should not share those among you in a way that is unjust.
Okay.
I have my own personal beliefs, but they're my personal beliefs. In my classroom, I'm talking to you about things that I believe to be factual, right? Politics isn't necessarily always factual. We argue on both sides of the facts, right? So we have to be careful about it. Scientists are human. You bring up a good point. And we have to check that humanity a little bit from time to time to make sure that we're not sacrificing the truth or our integrity in the process, right? Does that mean I can't own stocks? Of course not, it doesn't mean I can't own stocks, right? I can own stocks. But it would be wrong for me to own a stock in a company that I'm doing research trying to advance as a scientist at the institution, okay? And so we would see that as a personal conflict. Can that conflict be managed? Yes. There are conflicts that I have at this institution that we have to manage. Does that surprise you? I have a conflict right now on this floor. My wife works in the chemistry department. Over there, I'm in the provost office. There are potential conflicts of interest. When paperwork comes with her name on it, I cannot sign off on it. Even though it's stuff that I should be signing off on because of my job, I have to give it to the provost and say, I can't touch this. It would be unethical for me to do so because I have a vested interest in that outcome. The more my wife makes, the more I make. Right? We're a pair, we're a couple. We share a household, right? So that is clearly a conflict of interest that has to be managed. It is manageable, right? But you have to know what those conflicts are. Can anybody think of any other conflicts that might be in that boat, like manageable? Let's say I did own stock in Scigen, and Scigen did come to me and say, we want to give you this research grant because you're the world leader in unnatural amino acid synthesis. It's kind of my area. I'm probably not the world leader, but let's just say I am, right? I have a scientific obligation because of my expertise to do what I can for them. They're willing to give me money for it, but I've got a personal conflict of interest. How can I circumvent that conflict of interest? I can sell my stock. That's one way I can divest myself from that conflict. Now, wait a second, that's $1 million worth of stock, and I've got, tax burdens. Is there any other way that I might be able to mitigate it? I might be able to convert it over to a blind trust, where somebody else is managing it so that I'm not making decisions on when to buy stock or when to sell stock, because, hey, this is going to be a really cool find. I'm going to buy 20 more shares tomorrow. I've got somebody over there that's not talking to me, managing it, just looking at the normal stuff. There are ways. You've probably heard about people in politics managing their conflicts that way. Okay, so there are ways to do that. The last thing is use of confidential information. This will definitely be very important for you all when you all go into medical, for those of you going into the medical field, right? What kinds of confidential information? HIPAA, yeah. It's not right for you, as a physician or a lawyer, there's a certain client-provider confidentiality that's expected, right? Person walks into your office with a disease or a problem, they don't want you going out and saying, whatever, right? There is that confidentiality that is expected there, okay? So all of these things are going to come to be for you all at some point in your career. And I am not an expert on ethics. I'm not an ethicist.
Do you feel like there would be anything that we do research on as chemists that we would have to keep confidential from the public?
Yes, that does happen. So you might be and this happens even for undergraduate researchers, you might be working on a project that has the potential to be patented, right? And so you would have an obligation to keep it confidential within certain parameters until that patent has been filed. I've been in that situation. I was an undergraduate, but I had a patent when I was at Vanderbilt, and there's, people would ask me, what you working on? I'm like, no, we can't talk about it right now until we get the patent filed. Then I can talk about it. But I got to protect my employer's interests, which is if this turns out to be what we think it is, they stand to make a lot of money. So nothing's ever really clear cut, right? But things can be managed. Okay. Anything else? All right. So I am going to stop early today. Take your note card and put your name on the front. Put your name, print it out, please, your ID number, as always. And then on the back, just mention whether or not you are intending to go to one of Ms. Johnson's events and counting it as one of your activities assignments. You do not have to answer yes on that. I'm generally interested in seeing how many people might have that interest. I am going to pronounce your last name because that's what I've got on the personalized semester by semester guide piece on this rubric. Please raise your hand and I will give you Aiklin. And if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. I'm horrible with names. Alfred. Baden. Baden, not Baden. Ouchie. Good enough. Bandari? Did I pronounce that right? Davis? Generate? Did I pronounce that right? Rurun? Jordan? Jordan?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
So.
Last name, yeah. Landry. There you go.
My confusion is, why is this different from our grading canvas?
It's not, should be different.
In Canvas. And here I have 52.
Yeah, I didn't put it together. Just send me an email and I'll fix that. Larson? Pardon? Yeah. Good.
50 of this.
McGee? Neely? Nguyen? Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Peyton? Kingston? Pruitt? Pruitt? Ratliff? Scott?
Oh, yeah.
Goupian? Did I pronounce that right? Oregano? Pruitt? Ratliff? Goupian? That's all I've got. Yes.
I was considering this, so I could do it.
Yeah, you can do that. Sure, just a thought.
I just didn't want to, I was looking at it and I was doing this, and I was like, I learned almost well, and I didn't.
Oh, didn't put it down.
Okay, yeah, you can do that. It's a living document.
What, like, it's the sequencing here.
Yeah, like where there's the question marks and things like that. There's some other things in that sequence that should have been selected.
Alright. So I don't just list the basic, like, the first two prereqs, I list all of them.
You should have listed most of them, yeah. Don't forget, yes. What's your last name?
Bayard.
What?
Bayard. I figured it would have been one of the first ones.
No, I don't have that one. I'll have to go look. When did you turn it? Did you turn it in on that?
I thought I turned it in. I could have done it. Well, maybe.